The rain fell in heavy sheets outside the glass doors of the Hartwell building, a sleek tower of steel and ambition in downtown Pittsburgh. Inside, the lobby gleamed with polished marble, but Margaret Cole, a 62-year-old maid with stooped shoulders and graying hair tucked under a faded scarf, felt out of place. Her hands, rough from years of scrubbing floors, trembled as she pushed her cleaning cart toward the elevators. It was 5:30 a.m., too early for the suits and briefcases, but not for her. She'd been cleaning this building for 12 years, invisible to the executives who rushed past her during the day. This morning, though, something felt heavier. Her son, Tommy, had called last night, his voice cracking as he admitted he couldn't afford his rent again. Margaret had no money to send, only a heart full of worry. As the elevator dinged and opened, she froze. Standing inside was James Hartwell, the CEO himself, his sharp gray suit pristine despite the hour, his eyes, tired but kind, flicked up from his phone. Margaret's breath caught. She'd never been this close to him before. Instinctively, she lowered her gaze, her hands clutching the cart. But then, in a moment of courage she didn't understand, she lifted her hand and signed "Good morning" in American Sign Language, a skill she'd learned years ago for a deaf neighbor. Her fingers shook, and she braced for him to ignore her. Instead, James's face softened. He set his phone down and signed back. "Good morning to you too." Margaret's eyes widened, her heart thudding. Why did he know sign language? What did this mean? She stepped into the elevator, her cart rattling, and the doors closed, sealing them into a quiet hum of possibility. Have you ever taken a small risk to connect with someone and felt your world shift? Share your story in the comments below. The elevator ride was brief, but it felt like a lifetime. Margaret stood by her cart, her hands still tingling from the shock of his response. James leaned against the wall, his suit jacket brushing the railing. "You signed beautifully," he said, his voice low, like he didn't want to break the quiet. Margaret blinked, her cheeks warming. I learned it years ago from my neighbor, Miss Clara." She paused, unsure if she'd said too much. "Didn't think you'd know it, sir." James smiled, a real one, not the practice kind she'd seen in company newsletters. "My sister's deaf," he said simply. "Grew up signing before I could talk?" Margaret nodded, her shoulders easing a fraction. The elevator dinged at the 41st floor, his office level, but he didn't move. Instead, he gestured to her cart. "Long shift ahead?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Till noon, sir. Always is." He glanced at the rain streaking the lobby windows below. "You walked here in that?" She shrugged, her scarf damp against her neck. "Bus don't run this early. It's not so bad." James frowned, his brow creasing. Then, without a word, he reached into his briefcase and pulled out a folded umbrella, black and sturdy, the kind that didn't flip inside out in a storm. "Take this," he said, holding it out. "It's supposed to rain all day." Margaret stared, her hands frozen. I can't take that, Mr. Hartwell. It's yours." He shook his head, his eyes steady. "I've got another. You need it more." Her fingers brushed his as she took the umbrella, the warmth of his hand startling against her cold skin. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick. The elevator doors opened again, and he stepped out, but not before signing, "Stay dry." Margaret stood there, clutching the umbrella like it was something precious, her heart full of something she couldn't name. A stranger's kindness, small but real, had cracked open her morning. Margaret spent the next few hours cleaning the 38th floor, her mind replaying the elevator ride. The umbrella rested on her cart, a quiet reminder. She polished conference tables, emptied trash cans, and scrubbed coffee stains from carpets, but her thoughts kept drifting to James Hartwell. Why had he noticed her? Why had he cared? By 10 a.m., she was in the break room, a cramped space with a flickering fluorescent light and a coffee pot that never quite worked. She sat alone, her hands wrapped around a chipped mug of weak coffee, when the door creaked open. It was James again, his tie loosened, a paper bag in his hand. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, his voice gentle. Margaret's heart skipped. It's your building, sir," she stammered, gesturing to the empty chair. He chuckled, a warm sound, and sat across from her. "Just James, please. Sir makes me feel like my father." He slid the bag toward her. Got an extra bagel from the deli downstairs. Thought you might be hungry. Margaret's eyes stung. She hadn't eaten since yesterday's leftover soup. You didn't have to, she started, but he waved her off. I wanted to. She opened the bag, the scent of warm sesame and cream cheese filling the air. They ate in quiet at first, the only sound the rain tapping the window. Then James spoke, his voice soft. You remind me of my mom. She worked nights at a factory, never complained, always had a smile for me, even when she was bone-tired. Margaret's throat tightened. My Tommy's the same. Calls me every week, even when he's struggling. Don't want me to worry. James leaned forward, his eyes searching hers. Is he okay? Your son? She hesitated, her fingers tracing the mug's rim. He's trying. Lost his job last year. Can't seem to catch a break. James nodded, his face thoughtful. Sounds like he's got a good mom in his corner. Margaret's lips trembled into a smile, her hands steadier now. They talked longer about Pittsburgh winters, diner coffee, the way autumn leaves crunched underfoot. She told him about Tommy's love for drawing, how he'd sketched her hands once, calling them strong. James shared how his sister, Ellie, taught him to sign with patience, even when he fumbled. Their laughter was soft, their pauses comfortable. When Margaret glanced at the clock, her shift was nearly over. James stood, signing, "Thank you," before he left. Margaret sat there, the bagel bag crumpled in her hand, feeling seen for the first time in years. When was the last time a conversation made you feel truly heard? Drop your story in the comments, we'd love to hear it. The next week, Margaret noticed small changes. Her cart was restocked with better supplies, new sponges, a stronger mop. A note in the break room read, "Coffee machine fixed. Enjoy." She suspected James, though he never said a word. They crossed paths, more often him signing good morning in the lobby, her waving shyly from a hallway. One chilly November morning, she found a thrift store coat draped over her cart, navy blue and warm, with a post-it note, "For the walk home." Her eyes welled up. She wore it that day, the fabric soft against her aching shoulders. By Thanksgiving week, Margaret felt lighter, her steps surer. She and James had shared more break-room talks, their bond growing through quiet gestures on awkward smile when she offered him half her sandwich, a trembling hand when he showed her a photo of Ellie signing at her college graduation. But Tommy's calls grew heavier. His landlord was threatening eviction. She prayed in her small apartment, her Bible open to Psalms, but worry gnawed at her heart. On the Monday after Thanksgiving, she arrived at work to find James waiting in the lobby, his face serious. "Margaret," he said, his voice heavy with purpose. "Can we talk?" Her stomach dropped. Had she done something wrong? She nodded, her hands twisting the coat's cuffs, and followed him to his office. The room was warm, with a view of the Monongahela River glinting under gray skies. He gestured to a chair for her. "I heard about Tommy," he said, his voice low. "One of the HR folks mentioned his resume came through last month. He applied for a design job here." Margaret's breath caught. I didn't know." James nodded his head, his eyes steady on her. "He's talented, Margaret. We're offering him a freelance contract to start. It's remote, so he can stay where he is. And..." He paused, then slid an envelope across the desk, his voice softer now. "This is a bonus for you. For all you do here." Margaret's hands shook as she opened it, a check for 20, enough to help Tommy with rent, maybe more. Tears spilled down her cheeks, her voice breaking. Why are you doing this for us?" James signed family before he spoke, his eyes warm. "Because you're not invisible, Margaret. You matter, to this building, to me." She sobbed then, her hands covering her face, the weight of years lifting. He stood quietly, giving her space to breathe. When she looked up, her eyes were bright with gratitude. "God bless you," she whispered, her voice thick. James smiled, signing, "Thank you again," a gesture that felt like a promise. Margaret walked home that evening, the coat warm, the umbrella shielding her from a light drizzle. Tommy's voice echoed in her mind. He'd called her at lunch, his voice stunned by the job offer, his laughter like music. She passed a diner, its windows glowing, and saw families inside, sharing pie and stories. Pittsburgh felt alive, its bridges sturdy under the weight of countless lives. At home, she knelt by her bed, her hands clasped, thanking God for small kindnesses: an umbrella, a bagel, a coat that had led to this moment. She felt part of something bigger, a community woven by quiet acts of care. The next day, she left a thank you note on James's desk, her handwriting shaky but sure, signing "Thank you" at the end. She smiled at strangers in the lobby, signed "Good morning" to a new janitor, and felt the warmth of kindness spread outward. Has kindness ever changed your life? Share your story in the comments below. We might turn it into our next video. Like, subscribe, hit that bell button to join our community of kind hearts at The Kind Story.